In a nation that proudly speaks of unity, progress, and civilization, there exists another story, one written in silence, suffering, and unrecorded histories. A story that challenges the very foundations of our social fabric. Today, we enter the world of Bapurao Jagtap, a towering literary and social figure whose voice exposed the deep fractures of Indian society. Reverently known as Guruvarya, Jagtap was not only a distinguished Marathi poet but also a committed educationist and tireless social reformer. His life journey, from personal tragedy during the plague years to prestigious service in the princely state of Vadodara, and finally to grassroots educational work in Pune, reflects a profound ethical commitment to justice and human dignity. But it is in his poetry that Jagtap offers his sharpest critique. In This Country is Broken, he dismantles the myth of a unified nation and exposes a civilization splintered by caste, inequality, and inherited prejudice. His words echo like a warning, urgent, unflinching, and morally incisive. This poem is more than literature, it is testimony, it is resistance. It is the chronicle of a country that refuses to acknowledge its own wounds. In this video, we explore Jagtap's powerful indictment of a society broken into 1,000 pieces, his alignment with Ambedkarite thought, and the poetic force with which he transforms suffering into a call for solidarity, dignity, and change. Let us begin this journey into a poem that continues to unsettle our conscience and illuminate the truth of lived experience. Born in Pune to a family of modest means, his father was a bailiff and his mother a housemaid, Jagtap faced immense tragedy early in life, losing his parents and siblings to the plague epidemics between 1897 and 1906. Raised by an uncle, he completed his education and police training in Nashik, eventually securing the prestigious position of aide-de-camp, ADC, to the royalties of the princely state of Vadodara, including His Highness Sayajirao Gaikwad. Despite the comfort of this majestic job, Jagtap possessed an inner desire to educate the masses. He abandoned his lucrative career to return to Pune, where he founded the Sri Shivaji Maratha High School in 1918. Demonstrating a commitment to dignity of labor and social equality, he personally performed menial tasks such as cleaning and administration during the school's early, difficult days. Jagtap was deeply influenced by the reformer Maharshi Vithal Ramji Shinde, whom he met in Vadodara. This association led Jagtap to become a devout follower of the Prarthana Samaj, serving as the president of the Pune Prarthana Samaj from 1964 to 1978. His approach to social reform was practical and inclusive. He initiated religious education classes based on Prarthana Samaj principles and formed a family prayer circle where school teachers, students, and parents joined in weekly prayers. His career was marked by significant public service roles, including Mayor of Pune, 1962 elected as a candidate of the apolitical Nagri Sanghatna. He was known for his simplicity, often refusing official cars in favor of walking or using municipal buses. Educationist, he served as the first Indian principal of the Sri Shivaji Preparatory Military School in Pune and the education officer of the princely state of Kolhapur. Editor, he guided teachers for over 4 decades as the editor of the magazine Shikshak. Despite these reformist roots, Jagtap is celebrated as a foundational figure in Dalit literature, a movement that explicitly claims Dr. Ambedkar as its mythic giant, pioneer, and sole source of inspiration. Jagtap's inclusion in the seminal Ambedkarite anthology Poison Bread cements his status within this tradition. His influence by Ambedkarite principles is evident in the following ways. Rejection of the religious status quo. Jagtap's poetry aligns with Ambedkar's radical critique of Hinduism. His reference to a heartless religion and black laws in the poem This Country is Broken echoes Ambedkar's indictment of the Manusmriti and the religious codification of inequality. Structural critique of the nation, like Ambedkar, who argued that political reform was meaningless without social reform, Jagtap's poetry presents the nation as structurally broken and fragmented by caste, challenging the narrative of a unified India. Adoption by the Dalit Panthers. Although Jagtap belonged to an earlier generation of reformers, his work was enthusiastically embraced and canonized by the Dalit Panthers in the 1970s. This militant group, named after the Black Panthers and deeply committed to Ambedkarite ideology, recognized in Jagtap's screams a pre-echo of their own revolutionary manifesto. While Bapurao Jagtap's early social work was grounded in the Prarthana Samaj and influences like Maharshi Shinde, his literary voice is retrospectively defined by Ambedkarite principles. He serves as an ideological bridge, synthesizing earlier social reform efforts with the fierce, structural critique of caste that characterized the Ambedkarite literary tradition. His indictment of the black laws and the heartless religion provides the ethnographic plea against state hegemony that is central to the Dalit literary canon inspired by Ambedkar. Let's look into the poetical lines of "This country is broken. This country is broken into 1,000 pieces. Its cities, its religion, its castes, its people, and even the minds of the people. All are broken, fragmented. This country is broken into 1,000 pieces." The opening assertion frames the nation not as a unified political entity but as a violently fragmented social organism. The hyperbole, 1,000 pieces, conveys not only diversity but rupture, an image of a society shattered by historically entrenched inequalities. Jagtap employs fragmentation as a metaphor for caste stratification, suggesting that the very concept of national unity is an illusion. Its cities, its religion, its castes. Here the poet enumerates the structural components of society, exposing how each is implicated in sustaining division. The tricolon, cities, religion, castes, maps spatial, spiritual, and social terrains, indicating that fragmentation permeates every level of life. Religion and caste remain inseparable within the Hindu social order, hence the line insists that division is systemic rather than accidental. Its people, and even the minds of the people. Jagtap deepens the critique by expanding from external structures to internal consciousness. Fragmentation is not merely institutional but psychological. This line gestures towards the internalization of caste ideology, where oppression becomes part of social conditioning, fracturing solidarity and shared humanity. All are broken, fragmented. The emphatic repetition reinforces the totalizing nature of the rupture. No domain escapes disintegration. The word broken becomes both literal and figurative, suggesting physical suffering, moral decay, and the complete collapse of ethical cohesion. In this country, each day burns, scorching each moment of our lives. We bear it all and stand solid as hills. In this our life, that we do not accept. In this country, each day burns. Time itself becomes oppressive. The metaphor of burning evokes relentless suffering, similar to Ambedkar's comparisons of caste experience with perpetual fire. Daily life is not neutral but searing, a continuous assault on dignity. Scorching each moment of our lives. The verb, scorching, intensifies the sense of chronic anguish. Oppression is not episodic, it consumes each moment. This suggests a condition of existence where even ordinary time is contaminated by violence, humiliation, and exclusion. We bear it all and stand solid as hills. Despite unbearable suffering, the oppressed maintain resilience. The simile, solid as hills, underscores endurance, but it is also an indictment, strength born out of necessity rather than freedom. The line hints at stoic resistance, a collective will to survive. In this our life, a sudden reflective pause situates the experience within personal and communal identity. This our life marks a shared fate, a collective biography of oppression that we do not accept. This is the poem's first direct declaration of resistance. The oppressed refuse to legitimize the conditions imposed upon them. The phrase denies compliance and signals political awakening, a refusal to internalize casteist norms. Brother, our screams are only an attempt to write the chronicle of this country. This naked country, with its heartless religion. Brother, our screams are only an attempt. Addressing, brother, establishes solidarity among the marginalized. The screams signify both protest and pain, but they are also unmistakably textual. Jagtap equates poetic expression with an act of resistance, situating Dalit writing within a tradition of protest literature. To write the chronicle of this country. Here the poem shifts to a meta-poetic mode. Writing becomes a means of recording suppressed histories ignored or erased by dominant castes. The chronicle counters Brahminical narratives, reclaiming space for the Dalit standpoint. This naked country. The adjective, naked, strips the nation of its ideological pretensions. It reveals the raw brutality beneath patriotic rhetoric. Jagtap exposes the moral and ethical impoverishment of the social order. With its heartless religion. This is an unequivocal denunciation of caste-based Hinduism. Heartless, in its religion as devoid of compassion, structured instead around hierarchy and exclusion. The line echoes Ambedkar's critique of religiously sanctioned inequality. The people here rejoice in their black laws and deny that we were ever born. The people here rejoice in their black laws. Black laws refers to oppressive caste codes, rituals, customs, Manusmriti-like injunctions that restrict Dalit mobility and dignity. The verb, rejoice, is bitterly ironic. The privileged celebrate laws that guarantee their dominance at the cost of others' humanity. And deny that we were ever born. A devastating articulation of social erasure. The line captures the extreme dehumanization inherent in caste, the refusal of the dominant castes to acknowledge Dalits as fully human or socially legitimate. It recalls Ambedkar's observation that caste annihilates fraternity and erases personhood. Let us go to some country, brother, where, while you live, you will have a roof above your head, and where, when you die, there will at least be a cemetery to receive you. Let us go to some country, brother. The speaker turns towards imagined escape. The address, brother, reinforces communal kinship among the oppressed. The desire to migrate is symbolic, a longing for a space untouched by caste, a utopic alternative to systemic exclusion. Where, while you live, you will have. The utopic vision begins with the most fundamental necessities. Life becomes conceivable only where basic rights are assured, signaling how deprivation in India is not accidental but structural. A roof above your head. Shelter, one of the simplest human needs, is denied to marginalized communities. The line underscores the material dimensions of caste injustice. The right to inhabit space is itself contested. And where, when you die, there will at least be. Even death does not guarantee dignity within the caste order. The poem critiques how Dalit bodies are frequently denied ritual or spatial inclusion even in burial grounds. A cemetery to receive you. The concluding line is stark and searing. The right to rest in death, one of the most universal human entitlements, is denied to Dalits in many traditional contexts. Jagtap thus exposes the enormity of caste discrimination. It governs not only life but also death and posthumous dignity. The imagined country provides what India refuses, human recognition. Through vivid metaphors, unflinching realism, and an unmistakable political urgency, Jagtap documents the lived experience of caste oppression while simultaneously resisting it. The poem stands as a chronicle of suffering and a manifesto of protest, situating Jagtap firmly within the Ambedkarite Dalit literary tradition. Bapurao Jagtap's poem is a searing indictment of the caste-driven Indian social order. Through stark imagery, unembellished diction, and an unrelenting moral gaze, Jagtap exposes a civilization fractured at its foundations. The poem articulates not merely the suffering of the oppressed but also the moral bankruptcy of a nation that claims unity while perpetuating structural violence. Its themes therefore operate at multiple levels: social, psychological, political, ethical, and existential. Fragmentation and the illusion of national unity. One of the poem's dominant themes is the fundamental disintegration of the nation. The repeated emphasis on broken cities, religion, castes, and minds exposes a landscape where the promise of national unity collapses under lived reality. Jagtap denies the legitimacy of nationalist rhetoric by contrasting it with the everyday violence experienced by Dalits. The notion of a cohesive India is shown to be a linguistic fiction masking deep fractures. The fragmentation is not incidental, it is systemic and historically entrenched. Caste as structural violence. Beneath the poem's surface lies a powerful interrogation of caste as a mechanism of oppression. The black laws and heartless religion directly challenge the Manusmriti-based social order, echoing Ambedkar's critique of Brahminical Hinduism as an instrument of inequality. Caste appears in the poem not simply as a hierarchical arrangement but as a violent force that regulates existence itself, determining one's access to shelter, dignity, livelihood, and even burial. This structural violence shapes both the physical and psychological landscapes of the oppressed. Everyday suffering and the poetics of oppression. The poem articulates a world where suffering is not episodic but continuous. Each day burns and scorches the lives of marginalized communities, suggesting that oppression permeates every temporal moment. Jagtap captures the exhaustion of enduring a system that denies humanity at every turn. The quotidian nature of suffering becomes a defining feature of Dalit existence, rendering survival itself an act of resistance. This theme reinforces the Dalit litter. Silence, voice, and testimony. A crucial thematic strand is the transformation of screams into narrative. The poem conceptualizes the act of writing as an act of survival and political testimony. Jagtap positions Dalit expression as an ethical duty to chronicle the concealed history of oppression. Silence, historically imposed on Dalit bodies, is rejected. Instead, the poem speaks with an urgent, collective voice. The thematic interplay between scream and script foregrounds literature as a radical practice of reclaiming subjectivity. Moral and religious critique. The poem launches a fierce critique of religion, particularly Hinduism, as a legitimizing structure for caste oppression. By describing it as heartless, Jagtap exposes the hollowness of a spiritual tradition that sanctifies hierarchy. Religion here becomes a violent moral system that denies compassion and equality. This theme aligns with Ambedkar's argument that the Hindu social order is incompatible with human dignity. Thus, Jagtap's poem participates in a broader intellectual tradition of religious dissent, positioning itself within the Ambedkarite imagination. Social erasure and denial of existence. A striking theme is the denial of Dalit identity within the dominant society. The line, "They deny that we were ever born," captures the extreme dehumanization inherent in caste. Erasure operates at material, symbolic, and historical levels. Dalits are rendered invisible, unacknowledged, and socially illegitimate. This theme exposes the violence not only of physical exclusion but also of epistemic and cultural suppression, where entire communities are absent from the narrative of the nation. Utopian longing and the search for dignity. Towards the poem's end, a new theme emerges, the longing for another country, an imagined space where dignity is possible. This is not escapism but a radical critique of the impossibility of justice within the existing order. By imagining a place where one has a roof in life and a cemetery in death, Jagtap points to rights so fundamental that their absence becomes a moral condemnation of the nation. The utopic motive does not negate resistance, rather, it illuminates the magnitude of deprivation and the aspiration for humane existence. Collective resistance and solidarity. The repeated address, brother, emphasizes communal solidarity among the oppressed. Resistance becomes a shared endeavor rather than individual anguish. This theme situates the poem within a collective political consciousness where fraternity, denied by caste, is reclaimed by the oppressed themselves. The poem thus becomes a manifesto of unity from below, countering the fragmentation imposed from above. The body as a site of politics. The references to burning, scorching, shelter, and burial foreground the body as a site where caste violence is enacted. The body suffers, resists, travels, remembers, and eventually requires dignity in death. This corporeal focus underscores the material realities of oppression, housing discrimination, physical exclusion, ritual segregation. Jagtap's imagery insists that political analysis cannot exist without reckoning with embodied experience. Bapurao Jagtap's "This Country is Broken" stands as a work of profound ethical force. Its themes dismantle the myth of India as a harmonious nation and expose the brutal truth of caste oppression. Jagtap transforms poetry into testimony, resistance, and historical witness. The poem becomes an act of moral reckoning, a refusal to accept a society built upon dehumanization, and a demand for dignity, equality, and justice.